Hi, the topic of my speech is being culturally biased. And the purpose of my speech is to persuade you to understand that being culturally biased is a problem that we're facing and that we can hopefully change it. So let's do a little bit of a social experiment now. Now I'm going to call out a few ethnicities, and I want to see if you would like to participate. I hope you will. Raise your hand and see which ethnicity you fall into. So anyone consider themselves to be Hispanic or Latino, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With 8. How about African American? You have 0. Asian? 0. White or Caucasian? European descent? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Anything outside of that? No. Eastern? Anything else? No. As you can see, there's an uneven ratio. There's more Caucasian than there are Hispanic. There's no African Americans, there's no Asians. So there's always going to be an uneven ratio no matter what. And this is just a simple raising of hands. So you're separated regardless. But how can you really move past that? So in this speech, I'm going to touch on 3 different main points. 1 is the problem at hand, which is being culturally biased. 2 is causes and effects. And 3, I have a solution to this problem. So what is culturally biased? In Webster's dictionary, it says that the word bias is favoring or being for something. The word culture is a way of life or a way of living. So if you put those together, being culturally biased is favoring a way of life or favoring like a living system. What is culture? Culture is language, necessities, like food and hygiene. But at a very young age, we're taught to kind of think that, okay, this is our way of life and this is what we have to believe in. An example of this I took from the book was called Days of Obligation, by the writer Richard Rodriguez. And he says that people are taught that English is different from Spanish, Spanish is different from French, French is different from so on and so forth. But we're never taught that this is simply a form of communication, not a cultural reference. People need to identify with what they look like. So people need to identify with blonde hair, blue eyes, or dark skin, or if this skin is black, if this skin is brown, or who has curly hair, straight hair, no hair. And these are just cultural aesthetics that really blind us from what's really there. The second main point is causes and effects. If you are culturally biased, you will only see one viewpoint of man. You only see one path. You'll gain a sense of pride, but with great pride comes like prejudice. A sense of prejudice against things that you're not prideful for. It's one of those inevitable things. Many associate culture with country. And I'm taking another example from the book America the Capitalist, written by Michael Clarkson. He says that in America, you have every single culture around the world. It's predominant. You have Asian population, you have African, so on and so forth. But how can you consider yourself to be an American if you consider yourself to be Latino or Hispanic or African American or so on and so forth? It kind of doesn't mesh well. You're separating yourself beyond this. People have mainly persecuted themselves since the beginning of civilization, of which way of life is more essential, which way of life is more predominant. And it's called wars, poverty, violence, death. And these are common things that happen today. It may be more subtle, it may not be as severe, but it still happens. Now, a simple solution to this is look at life, look at us as humans as a big tree. Being human is the structure, and the branches, the leaves, the bark, the color of it is everything else. It's secondary. But the main root of it, the main structure of it, is us being humans. The cultures that we have, doesn't matter if it's black, white, yellow, green, whatever we consider ourselves to be, that's all secondary. You need to first and foremost consider yourself to be human. Consider yourself to be a human being, because that's what you started out as. You need to strip away all the things that blind you from what you think a human's supposed to be, or what a culture's supposed to be. Like you see someone who has dark skin, you want to relate to that person. But strip all that away, because those are just simple aesthetics that we're just going to blind you to. You have a person in front of you, and you can relate to it. It doesn't matter who it is. I can relate to you if your skin's darker than mine. I can relate to you if your skin's whiter than mine. It doesn't matter, because right there I see a person with flesh, I see a person with blood, eyes, a brain, a beating heart. Strip it all away. We eat food, we live, we sleep. It doesn't matter if I eat rice and beans, or if I eat chitlins, or if I eat mashed potatoes or pork. It doesn't matter if I listen to salsa, it doesn't matter if I listen to rap or hip hop. That doesn't mean I'm black, it doesn't mean that I'm Latino. It means that I'm listening to music and that I'm a human doing these things. the only big solution to not being biased to a culture is being biased to being a human being. And possibly a better solution to that is being biased to being a living being amongst other living beings, such as other mammals, animals, plants, the earth. You're a living being. And if you want to think in a spiritual sense, think of yourself as a human being created by God. Nothing more. Be biased to that. Don't be biased towards being a culture, because you're barely tipping anything. Now, it is important to be aware of what separates us, and this is just a simple problem like many other things, but we can change it. So hopefully after this and this speech, and if we continue to kind of inform and try to persuade and argue this, that we can raise our hands and not say, oh, I'm a Latino, but we can all raise our hands together as a classroom or as a world, or as a community, and say that we're just human beings.